I hope you're proud of yourselves. A week ago, or a couple days ago, I don't remember, I posted this on my Instagram story. And I asked you, those of you who follow me on Instagram, I said, do you think I should watch this season? Can my blood pressure handle it? And you people told me yes. Now, some of you did send me a DM and say it's very messy. But for the most part, y'all told me I would be all right. I'm going to tell you, I have never been more emotionally involved in a season of Love is Blind. And I know that's hard to believe given my feedback on previous seasons, which I'm having a hard time remembering season 5. Like, who was on there? What happened? I don't remember. I remember Marshall and Jackie and whatever we got going on right now. Oh, Milton, Lydia. Okay, I got it. Anyway, I know that the new episodes are coming out on Wednesday, which depending upon when I post this could be tomorrow or could be in 2 days. But I wanted to give my opinion and my reaction to the first 9 because I watched them all this past weekend. And I wanted to go ahead and remind y'all that when I ask you if my blood pressure can handle something, please be honest with me. Or hey, don't be honest because, you want me to make a video about it. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. My review of the first 9 episodes of season 6 of Love is Blind. I want to say with this review, you guys, I am not going to be talking about social media's reaction to them at all. Well, maybe with Chelsea, but for the most part, I'm just going to stick to the show and to the characters. To the people, a lot of my opinions and my takes are actually kind of popular, so you may have heard them before, and I'm just going to be reiterating what some other people have said, and just in general, this is going to probably be the most connected you and I, as a creator and an audience, have been when it comes to this show since I started talking about it on this platform. So anyway, let's go. I'm going to start off with the pods and just in general give my quick summation of how I felt about each person that caught my eye in the pods. There were a lot of people, obviously like every season, who came in. Some people got storylines, some people didn't. There were some people who were kind of in the background for me that I was like, oh, this person I can tell has good energy, but they didn't walk away with anyone, like this young lady right here and this young lady right here. I would have loved to see what they got up to in the pods, but I know that, unless you walk out with an engagement or an engagement story that Netflix actually wants to publicize, you don't really get camera time. I do think that they'll have some social media fame in the future, but as far as being on the show in any real capacity, they weren't. However, they did catch my eye. Also, this guy right here, I thought he was super interesting. He's the one that sat down and like rips his pants right at the beginning. I thought he was interesting. He's very cute. His social media, like he's super cute. And I wish he'd walked out with a fiance or something. And maybe that'll come out later. I don't know. But these guys caught my eye. And I wanted to know more about them, but we didn't. Let's talk about who we did get to learn about. I'm going to start off with the girls. I want to talk about AD. The reason why I want to talk about AD is because up until she said she doesn't do extra calories for no reason, I was prepared to make AD my fitness guru. Like, her body, as the youth say, her body is tea. Okay. She's my hero because she's a professional cheerleader. She danced in 2 Super Bowls. And I feel like AD is who I would have been if I'd had an ounce of self-esteem after I got out of college cheer and like really thought, and also if I thought I wanted to go that route. So I would have needed like more dance training. Anyway, enough about me. My point is that I so look up to her in that regard. And again, like I said, the body is bodying. And, y'all don't know this about me, but I was supposed to be AD size by the time I turned 40. Okay, that was my goal. I was supposed to be fine. Okay, it didn't happen, but that's all right. We got the rest of the year to see what's gonna go down. But I was just from the beginning, the first moment I saw her, I was like, I want to look like that. And then she made that comment about the calories, and I was like, never mind. Because one thing about me, I'm gonna eat. But I still was inspired by her. I was inspired by the way she carried herself, especially in the situation with Matthew. Woo, and I'm gonna talk about him in a minute. But I loved AD. I did not like some of the initial interactions between her and Clay, but I'm going to tell you this. The second Clay was like, oh, AD all day, I was like, oh girl, I would have folded. He would have been my first. He would have been my first choice. Just from that, like I could tell she just really liked him. Like he was fun energy for her. So yeah, loved her energy the whole time. Saw us making some of the same faces, like especially when it had to do with Matthew. I can't wait to talk about him. But she was definitely my favorite of all the characters. Some people have talked about her hair on the show quite a bit. Because AD has a sew-in with leave-out that does not match the texture of the sew-in. And as she's going through this adventure, you know, she's in the pods, and then she's out in the Dominican Republic and maybe getting in the water, maybe not, whatever. You know, that leave out starts to show up. And somebody made a really passionate video on TikTok talking about her hair and how Black women really need to care about themselves when they go on reality shows like this, because production is not going to tell them, sis, your leave out is frizzing above the rest of your weave. Like everybody can tell it's not blending. You need to, you know, it's that whole thing again about hard wig, soft life, right? Production don't care because they probably don't notice the way we notice, but we be noticing. And so I think just for me, to keep people's mouths closed talking about me, if I went on a show like that, I'm doing braids. I'm doing braids 100%. And AD actually has a picture posted on her Instagram of herself in braids, and she's beautiful in braids. And so, yeah, I would have braided my hair up if I was her. But that's I'm just giving first impressions here. And first impressions were her body was excellent. I really liked her chemistry with Clay right off the bat. I didn't like all of their conversations, but I'll get to that a little bit later. And I thought she did a really good job in the pods, especially when she was in a trifling situation like she was in with Matthew. Anyway, let's move on. Next person I want to talk about is Chelsea. Now, I want to say this. There were a lot of girls who went into the pods who were dealing with the guys, right? But I'm only going to talk about the ones who caught my eye. They're not necessarily all the ones who ended up being fiancés, but I wasn't really paying attention to a lot of the girls until they came out of the pods and went to DR. Chelsea and AD were two of the ones that from the beginning, I was like, what's going on here? What's going on with their stories? With Chelsea, of course, I started watching this season late, so I knew her as the girl, the Megan Fox girl. And I want to say I saw her post on TikTok and on Instagram, and she looks different in those posts than she did on the show. But when I saw her TikTok and Instagram posts, I'm like, you know, she don't look that different. You know, I can see the hair in the eyes, like I can see that. But when I saw her in the show, I was like, girl, Megan Fox. And I know that Chelsea said, I don't see it, and other people tell me that, but it would have been jarring for me too if I was Jimmy Johnny, whoever she got engaged to, and I came out of the pods and saw her, because it's not at all, right? The other thing about Chelsea that I picked up on, which a lot of people did, is her the crying and the I couldn't figure out why she had these men in a chokehold like this. And I came up with a theory about it, and I'll share it at the end of my little pods review. But and she only did it with Jimmy Johnny, but the crying, like when she mentioned that she had been divorced, the way she like broke down, she very much gave from the very beginning a lack of emotional, like she didn't have her bearings. But instead of men kind of counting that against her, they were really into that, which was a surprise for me. And I think it's because maybe being a vulnerable, broken baby bird is more attractive than being like a, you know, straight shooting, tough talker, whatever type of woman, I guess, like a dominating type of energy, which brings me to Jessica. Okay. We're going to leave Chelsea alone for now. We're going to go to Jessica. Jessica, I did not expect to disagree with her as much as I ended up disagreeing with her. I too feel like she was a better match for Jimmy Johnny. And that's because from the beginning, it just seemed like they had incredible chemistry through that wall. Like it seemed like there was something there from the beginning. But then Jessica started to switch on him, I feel, and started to come off as controlling, which if I'm him and I'm trying to make a decision, I probably am going to go with the woman who seems like less of like a emotional, domineering kind of threat to me. And I will say, Jessica, she made a comment about Instagram and how if he's on Instagram, he's not allowed to follow certain girls or do certain things. And she's not going to fight with him about that. She needs to be the only woman to me, that is, I think it's something that women want, but to request it and to request it like that is, I mean, hey, it's what she needs. But I just felt like it was a very controlling and kind of an insecure thing to ask for. And I also feel like a good man is somebody that you won't have to ask for that from. So I'm kind of torn on how I feel about that. I don't like how she said it to him. I'll put it that way. But if that's something she's had trouble with in the past, then that's fine. She does strike me as somebody, though, who would always be watching, like, did your Instagram following go up? Who are you talking to? What? And I will say, I have never been in that close of a relationship with somebody to have to worry about that and to be that invested. And maybe I would think differently about that request if I was. But she came off as insecure and controlling with that. She also came off as kind of insecure and controlling when she was talking to him about, she's like, I've told you how I feel, I've told you all these things, and he didn't respond, and she snapped at him. And she was like, how dare you let me say all of this when you knew, and hey girl, if he is not there, he's not there, but I do think that her actions in that time pushed him towards Chelsea, who, while being a crybaby, definitely, at least in the pods, seemed like she'd be the less scary of a choice. I really think he chose her because she seemed less scary, right? I think if Jessica had been able to rein in some of that, which is hard. It's hard in this kind of experiment. I get it. I get your emotions flying everywhere. But I do think, and also from experience know, that men will choose the less scary choice. They will try and do that. We saw that with Izzy and Stacey. Stacey's playing cool girl, right? And Izzy's like, oh, she's a better choice. They get in the real world and Stacey's like, surprise, don't show me a paper plate. She shows how she's actually not cool. She's actually controlling. She's actually got, a lot of the things that a lot of women have, which are things we need, which are, they are non-negotiables. We need you to do these things. But women who can play the game, who can pretend to be cool, who can put forth that energy, tend to be able to trap men into situations where otherwise, if you had shown who you were in the beginning, they probably wouldn't have gone there with you. And I do want to say too, both Chelsea and Stacey are Libras. And I think Libras are really, really good at showing people what they need to see to bring someone in. And then, once they get in, showing them what's really up. That's that charming nature. That's that very diplomatic nature. And our girl Jessica is a Capricorn. She's going to talk right to it. She doesn't care, like, your emotions or whatever. She's telling you how she feels, and she's telling you right now. So I think that's what the turnoff for Jimmy was. Of course, or Jimmy Johnny. I don't really know his name. I will get to his name in a second, but I'm calling him Jimmy Johnny because there's just way too many J names in this season. I think Jessica's speech, though, that she gave him was iconic. Hey, when you see me, when you know who you didn't choose, because I think at this point she knew that it was between her and Chelsea, you're gonna choke. You're gonna need an EpiPen. Like that was an incredible speech. It was good. And a lot of people were not pleased with her for doing that because, that's not being a girl's girl and you're calling out the fact that you're more physically attractive and, that's not fair. But I do, it's a game. They're trying to play to win. And she's just letting him know, I know what I'm worth physically. I know what I bring to the table, physically speaking. And me and this girl aren't on the same plane, which makes me wonder, when I see women like Jessica in this kind of experiment, I always say, girl, what are you doing? Because you gotta know there's they gotta be lined up down the block. She has a huge social media following. I don't see why she would need, everybody can say, well, everybody has issues and dating is hard. I don't know. I'd be confused. When I see a woman that looks like Jessica, I'm confused. Why are you on the show? Anyway, I want to talk about Brittany at this point, but I can't because I don't really remember anything with her and Kenneth in the pods. I just remember them seeing each other and me feeling like Kenneth didn't deserve her. And that was the feeling that I had about him throughout the show and the feeling that I still have about him to this day. But I'll get to him in a second. I liked Laura in the pods, and I did not like her afterwards. I don't know her, but just based on the show, I was like, Okay, let's move on to the guys. So the first guy I want to talk about is Jimmy Johnny. Now this man's name is actually, and the first thing I picked up about him is that he definitely has an energy about him that I assume is very magnetic in real life too. I don't know how he got on the show, if he's somebody that actually applied or if Love is Blind reached out to him. But I don't know. I feel like he made it very far being a man who in real life, maybe, I don't know if he would be able to do that. I don't know. What I will say is that I felt like he was a decent dude in the pods. I still feel like he's not the worst part of the relationship between him and Chelsea. I still feel that way. But all I will say is that he is a gaslighter. He is excellent. Like even though I don't like how Jessica was calling him out and the way she was talking to him, I do understand the frustration because he did know how he felt. He did know he did not return her feelings. He did know, like he knows, but he doesn't always want to own up to what he knows. And it makes the women whose intuition is going off like a wild bell, it makes them so upset. And he will feign like, oh, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to, and he'll run away like he ended up doing in the real world. But yeah, for the most part in the pods, I couldn't get over how much game he had or how much women were into him. When I remember thinking, and I wrote this down in my notes app, Jessica, you are giving him this speech about how he's gonna need an EpiPen and a Claritin and a Benadryl and a whatever else. But girl, if you could see this man, you would shut up immediately. It would be like one of those situations. You would not, you sitting up here throwing this fit and having this problem. Girl, I wanted somebody to say, you know what, Jessica, girl, you're talking too much. Let's lift the veil. Lift it. We know he's not going to ask you to marry him. Let's go ahead and reveal right now so you can calm down. But of course, I didn't do that. And I feel like her reactions like that do nothing but feed his ego. I feel like he is a fairly confident guy. But in the pods, for the most part, I liked him. Next guy I want to talk about is Clay. So I don't hate Clay the way the rest of the internet does, because I think Clay is honest about his lack of emotional development. And while I don't think that means AD owes him anything, and I do not think they should get married, I don't. At the same time, I respect him for being honest. Like y'all, a man saying my ego is a problem for me is thank you. Thank you for acknowledging it. Do you know how many men will blame their relationships or their reactions to situations or on women? It's the woman's fault that I did this. Well, because you didn't do this for me. Whole time, your ego was making this entire interaction so toxic. And the fact that he can say, my ego is an issue, it does get in the way. I don't know how I feel about relationships. I do want to be married, but I know I struggle with these things. I felt like, again, she doesn't owe him her companionship, but the fact that he can own up to that stuff, it is a beautiful thing. And from the beginning, their energy was really interesting to me. I was most excited for those two to reveal themselves to each other because I felt like they had the most, even though of course, there's people out there who were like, Clay did not want a dark-skinned woman. I don't know. I wouldn't say all that. He has not given any indication in my mind that he didn't want AD because she was dark-skinned. So I would not say all of that. But yeah, I definitely feel like he is a work in progress. He maybe shouldn't get married, but I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. Unlike the last season, I don't know about the birth certificates. I don't know who walks down the aisle. I don't know nothing. So yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next guy. I want to talk about Trevor. Now, when I said I didn't know anything, what I meant was I don't know anything about the people on the show and how everything ends up. But as far as the tea that people have gathered around cast members, of course, I know that. I've been paying attention. There's a number of cast members, specifically Trevor and Jeremy, who had significant things going on in their personal life when they signed on for this show. And in my mind, it was dead ass wrong for Netflix to hire them. When people say that they go through psychological evaluations and background checks and all this stuff, I think we have to start realizing as a populace that's watching the show, Netflix is putting people who have actual issues, relationship problems, secret fiancés, whatever, they're putting them on the show for drama. They're doing this on purpose. They're casting people that will cause problems and will cause the experiment to be toxic on purpose so that we stay watching and stay talking about the show. So anytime somebody's like, where are they getting these people? What's going on? They pick them for a reason. I don't think it is a flex or it's a compliment to be chosen by Netflix for any of their dating shows specifically. And if you're ever reached out to and you make it on the show, you really have to reflect on what that says about you. Am I supposed to be a straight man in the middle of all this chaos? Am I supposed to be the chaos? What does my personal life really look like? Because if it's messy and you still go on that show, you a fool.
So, yes, I wanted to jump on here and share my story and experience of how I was casted on this current season of Love is Blind. So, a casting agent reached out to me from Instagram and they saw I was from North Carolina, from Raleigh, so a couple hours away from Charlotte, had me fill out an intake form. And get this, Love is Blind, all the questions were about physical traits, what I looked like, what I was attracted to, what I would normally approach, nothing about emotion, connection, what I find like good in a person outside of physical traits, which initially I thought was odd. I get through, and then I do my first virtual interview, and they kind of ask those same questions again, kind of my story. But I did tell them, hey, I was recently divorced. I'm not looking to be married again, especially this soon. And they ultimately said that that was going to be okay, which I was taken aback, but they said, we'll explain that to you at the next interview. And then at the next interview, I told the casting agents the same thing that, hey, I was recently divorced, don't want to be married this soon. It's been not even a year. And they're like, hey, Scott, we know not everyone gets married on the show. Some people just bring a different dynamic to it. And the viewers like to watch certain things and they like to see X, Y, and Z happen. And I was like, ultimately, you either want me to lead someone on or become a villain on the show, huh? And they said that's not exactly what we're saying, but people do gravitate towards, or people like to watch certain things happen on the show. And yes, I thought that was odd, but hey, I could be on Netflix. So I went to one more round, and that's when they were like, hey, you don't live in Charlotte, you live in Raleigh, huh? I said, yes. But to this girl's point, there are some contractual clauses in there. If you make it so far, you are on the hook for certain things. Now, would I do Love is Blind? Probably not.
You are a fool. And Trevor is a fool. There's really no reason to even talk about him and who he was in the pods because if you don't know, it came out that he had a whole girlfriend the whole time. And he and his girlfriend decided together that he would go on the show because he knows how much you can start making as an influencer, how many Instagram followers you can get, how many, like he wanted into that world. And he told her, hey, if we're going to build a life together, I want to start making this kind of money. And so I think that this is a good way for me to get into it. And she signed on to it. She said, okay. And they were still dating the whole time. So while he's trying to walk off with the fiance and telling Chelsea, I love you and all this crap, whole time this man got a woman. Whole time. And the woman knew about it. And then once the show aired, she started coming out and airing out all this crap, posting text messages. I thought that was foul because, girl, you let him go on this show. I thought that was foul. And she said she did it because she's had situations in her life where men have not let her feel seen, and she didn't want to not feel seen any longer. And it's like, well, why you let it? What are you doing? What? Anyway, the point is that Trevor, he's just not even worth talking. The only thing we're talking about him is his haircut and the fact that at one point he just had a whole bunch of red pimples right along his hairline. I don't know what he did or if he slept on something or if there's bed bugs in the in pods or what. But that is something I noticed. But anything else about him, any chemistry he might have had, any whatever, I think it's just not even worth talking about because he came on the show to play games. He did not come on the show to actually like get married and walk away with a spouse. So he's not worth talking about. The next person that is really not worth talking about is Jeremy. I could tell from the beginning that Jeremy had a lot more confidence than he needed to have based on like his physical form. And that might sound mean, but it is what it is. And usually people have that kind of confidence because relationships, dating, being and committed to, it's not hard for them. I want to point out here that the cast is made up predominantly of Scorpios and Virgos, even though we do have our Libra Chelsea. But I have noticed about Scorpio men specifically that they're incredibly magnetic, So it doesn't matter what else they have going on, what else they're doing. They're gonna be able to pull. They're gonna be able to get somebody. And I'm always just like I look at Jessica and I'm like, girl, why are you on this show? Like, are you serious? You could be dating any baller, anybody. And I understand dating is hard, but this way, come on, babe. Come on. The same way I think about like a man like Jeremy. I'm like, it's very clear from the way you present yourself and the way that you talk that meeting women and talking to women ain't hard for you. And I've been around men like you. Like, I think his birthday is November 20th. I done been around that energy before. Y'all don't have to work. People are, the ladies are coming. So why are you here? And it turns out he was there. He was cast for chaos, right? Netflix knew that he was engaged a couple weeks before the show came out. They knew he had just broken off an engagement. When they go to the real world and you see his home and Laura, who he gets engaged to, is like, oh, are you sure you live here by yourself? I mean, this silverware is really nice. And he's like, yeah, it's mine. It's mine. Ooh, you are a liar. That was it. I mean, he was in the process of selling his home when they, this man, from the beginning, I was like, he seems too hyper confident and like he's too smooth. He's too smooth and he's playing. I don't know. I don't really like the energy because it seems, maybe because I could see him, I don't know, but I was like, he just seems like he's too comfortable. Like he need to have a little bit more trepidation, and he's comfortable because he's used to getting what he wants from women. How are you going to sit up there and say, I've had some really horrible dating experiences when you were just engaged? And I don't know the engagement. I don't know how it went down, but bro, like shut up. You ain't had no horrible dating experiences. You were just engaged. Excuse me. So anyway, when I saw that and I saw him and all the information came out afterwards, I was like, I may not know everything about people, but I think I'm a pretty good judge of character. And the second he started talking, I was like, I don't like that one. I don't like him. And I don't want to talk about Sarah Ann right now. I'll talk about her in a second. But I will say that her telling him that she was a conservative and then doing what she ended up doing later, to me, it was a perfect snapshot of conservatism in America. Conservative because it sounds good, but actually when we get down to it, morally and ethically dubious in character. So I'll just say that. Anyway, moving on. If it seems like my blood pressure was high watching the show, taking all this in, it is. And we're still just in the pods. And now we're about to get to the messiest character in my mind. And he was such a surprise, and he was also messy for me and a surprise for me and weirdly disorienting for me because he reminded me of a dude that I've dealt with. And you know it's real. You know it's real when people who were in your life when you dealt with that dude call you up on the phone and ask you, are you okay? He reminds me of someone you were around. And I was like, girl, you're a psychic, because that's exactly what I was thinking. And I am talking about Matthew. Okay. So I'm not going to say which one of the funky little situations I was in my life that he reminds me of, but let's just say, when he came on the screen, I had heard people talk about Matthew. He's a red flag this, he's a red flag that. And my initial reaction is to try and be protective of these people because I know what it's like to be perceived publicly. And so I'm like, okay, who is he? So he starts talking and he's like, I'm just not good at this. They have the scene that they edited where he gets up and walks out of the room. And everybody was mad because apparently they edited that scene together and that's not what really happened. But to me, Netflix did that because they were setting us up for what Matthew would do later on. Anyway, so I'm not going to lie. I was attracted to him. I was probably the most attracted to him than anybody else in the show initially. He's tall, he's dark haired, he's incredibly well built. The internet has revealed that he's a Capricorn man, which unfortunately is a weakness of mine. I could just feel like I would have folded with Matthew. I would have been just like AD was, like eating it all up. Um, I could tell like when he got in her presence that he softened with her. And that's very sexy because he let people know right in the beginning, like, oh, I'm not good at this and I never know what to say and emotions aren't my strong suit. And I just started therapy. And I'm looking at him, I'm just like, he's got that corporate, like, yeah, hey, listen, I was a Matthew apologist initially until we got to what ended up happening with AD when he basically showed himself to be a tactical, evil, plotting, malicious, like he used emotional weaknesses just to try and win a game. And he didn't just do it to her. He ended up doing it to another cast member as well. And when I say me and AD were making the same faces, there was a point when she was going up to the girls after she had finished a day in the pods and she's talking to Amber. And her and Amber says, yeah, I've been talking to Matthew. I really like him. He's very intense. He's like, we can leave today. What if I wanted to leave with you today? And he had just finished saying the same thing to AD. And when AD heard that, she went, and I'm at home watching and I go, and so, it was like I was feeling the emotions there with her. And then I've been in that situation before where you're talking to somebody who's saying everything he knows you want to hear, not because he really wants you, but because he is a tactical, competitive, he wants to win. He doesn't want you, he wants to win. And what was really interesting about Matthew was when she called him on it. And he was like, oh, so America's going to see this? This is what's going to be shown to America? Oh, man. Like, why are you so worried about what America's going to see? And yet you went on TV and you were doing, and what was so crazy is he said, well, hey, the cameras are rolling. Like, I can't lie about what I said. You're right. The cameras are rolling. You can't lie about it. So what are you doing? Why are you lying? It set me off in all kind of ways. I was taken back to my past and forced to deal with certain feelings all over again. And then, like I said, I had a friend who was around me at that time call me up and say, I know you were wondering if you could watch this season or not. When I saw Matthew, I immediately was like, I need to check on Stephanie because he reminds me of old dude. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. He reminded me of him too, all the way down to the lies and the duplicitousness and the double speak, like crazy. And you just have to know, if you're ever in a position with somebody like that, that they know you, they can read your energy. They understand, like even through a wall, the things that you say, they know who they can pull that stuff on, and they're doing it to you, not because you deserve it, but because in their mind, you're a mark and they want to win. So the best thing you can do is figure out what they're trying to do and get out early, like AD did. But yeah, I was really disappointed though too in their connection, because while I really liked her energy with Clay, her energy with Matthew was very sexy to me. And I was like, you know what? I remember before I had to run away from my situation, that energy was very sexy, and then it wasn't. I think it was interesting that she brought up the whole ethnicity thing with him, and he was like, oh, it doesn't matter at all, because then later on she would bring it up with Kenneth in a different way. And it seems like she wasn't actually okay with dating a white man. And I don't think she was upfront with herself about that. But anyway, so we're in the pods, we get to the engagements. By now, you know who got engaged. And if you don't, it's not really a spoiler alert at this point because the episodes have been out for a while. So we know we have Clay and AD. We know we have Jeremy and Laura. We know we have Jimmy, Johnny, and Chelsea. We know we have Jimmy, Johnny, and Anna. I don't really remember these guys in the pods that much. I kind of do. I skipped over Anna. I will say with Anna, I wonder if there's something about your late 20s where you begin to think that your life is completely over. Because I will say about Anna, she kept saying, she said at one point, I've just been searching for so long and it's just, I don't really need love, but it would be nice. And then she starts crying and I'm like, do we convince ourselves at that time in our life, because our time is always up, so it must not be something we need. So we wouldn't seek it so hard. It wouldn't be so interesting to us if love was not something we needed. But the reason why we are so interested in it and we go after it, we write the love songs, it takes up so much of the space in our brains, is because it's not just a biological need, but it's a spiritual need. And I think our capitalistic, individualistic society has convinced us that we are less than if we voice, like, I do want a partner. I do want to be in a partnership. And it's not just about, the financial rewards it could give me or the societal rewards. It is a spiritual and emotional need. Like, and that's a fine thing. It's a fine thing to want to be loved. And I could see, like, with Anna, she'd been fighting that for a little bit. Also, I loved when she talked about her brother, and how she, I have a similar story from when I was little, and I have a whole theory about that, but I'll leave that alone. And I felt like her Jimmy Johnny that she was with is probably the most decent and pure-hearted and sweet man on this whole season. And I loved when they met. Like, you could tell he was like, he was kissing her for real. He was kissing her for real. And so I loved that. Anybody else to me? Oh, Kenneth and Brittany. When they met, I was like, girl, it felt false on his end. The energy didn't feel right on his end. And speaking of the energy, I feel like initially, whenever the show came out, I was like, is love blind or whatever, right? And my answer would have been no, And I don't think it's completely blind, but I do think that there is perception around us, that we all have the power of perception. And I think when people fall in love in these situations, there's something you are able to pick up about someone through a voice, through the things they say, through the ways that they laugh. And I do think you can develop a really strong emotional connection to somebody. If you're in an experiment like that and someone is saying certain things and hitting your buttons and you're developing that emotional attraction to them, and then you see them in real life, I think it is easier to forgive them of their physical flaws or to look past certain things. So I do think you can fall in love with somebody without seeing them. However, should you marry them at that point? No, I do not think love is blind, but marriage is not. Relationships are not. That's my opinion. Okay, y'all, let's go to the Dominican Republic. All right, so we're in the DR. And the first thing that I notice is Anna and Jimmy Johnny are going to be boring on this trip. They're really into each other. They're having a good time. It is what it is. I thought they would be one of the couples that got physical first. But of course, as we all found out, Anna is not on birth control. But I know for religious reasons, people don't like to do it. And I know for personal reasons, like health reasons, people don't like to do it. And I respect that completely. However, Anna is in this relationship with Jimmy Johnny, and that man has a whole plan for his life. He don't want no poor babies. He wants to buy a house. And unfortunately, that means that y'all's sexual politics are not congruent. So unless you want to have a completely celibate relationship, then somebody gonna have to do something. And I don't know what they're gonna do, but to me, that's a deal breaker. You want to be in this relationship with me? Great. We have common goal. Great. But we can't have sex. It'd be fine if we had a baby. That's what she ends up saying to them when they go back to Charlotte. And he's like, no, it would not. That's a deal breaker for y'all. Y'all need to examine that. So I really thought, based on their chemistry and stuff, when they got to the DR, they would be the main couple that was all over each other, but it wasn't true. Next we have Clay and AD. I'm going to say this again. They are the hottest couple together. Once again, I was inspired by AD in her bathing suit in the DR. Unfortunately, for me, I do love those calories, but I have started working out. So we'll see how close I get, but I ain't never gonna get as close as that. We can't talk about AD in the DR without talking about the way that Jimmy Johnny responded to her body on the beach. But before I get there, I do want to talk a little bit more about Clay and his openness and his vulnerability. He got a lot of shit, again, from the internet about saying, my dad has cheated. I've never really seen a Black relationship that's lasted. I didn't grow up, seeing that. And when he said, my dad's a suave guy, I already knew that later on he would say, my dad will probably try and hit on you, because he did. I feel like Clay is scared to commit. He said, I don't want to let you down. And unfortunately, he should probably listen to that and not be in a relationship with her. She kind of made me sad. I don't know if she said it in the DR, but I do know that she says, I don't think I'm worthy of love. And that confused the shit out of me, because I'm like, wait a minute, girly. Wait a minute. Okay, so wait a minute. Wait a minute. I would understand. Wait a minute. I just, in that moment, I wanted to give a shout out to anyone who has had to rebuild themselves. And I don't know her. I don't know her life, but she did say, you know, I've dated ballers, I've dated this, I've dated that. I wanted to give a shout out for anybody who's had to rebuild themselves and their self-esteem without any public validation at all. Because a lot of times I think self-esteem is a tandem thing. I think it starts with you. I think it also depends on what you're experiencing in real life out in the world. And you know, a lot of times people will say, oh, you just need to love yourself. But when you take time and you do fix your hair, you do whatever, you go out in the world and you never receive any positive validation, positive affirmation, you know, you never get, you know, whatever. Um, it's hard to say, okay, well, I still deserve ... And I just can't imagine AD living a life where she's not received any positive validation, not received any good treatment, to the point where she would believe that I don't deserve to be in a good situation. But maybe she did. It just made me sad. It confused me. And I think that because of that, she will try and stay and work something out with a man who just isn't ready. He's not ready. And, you know, he kept saying things like, you know, please understand I need to be babied every once in a while. Boy, you have a mom. She's alive. But I got what he was, I got what he meant. I got what he meant. Anyway, their relationship was interesting to me there because, you know, it is what it is. I did not like that whenever they get on the beach after Jimmy Johnny says, hey, you have such a nice body. And he's like turning her around, which he later lied about doing that. He's like turning her around or whatever. I didn't like the fact that when he asked her about Clay, she was like, well, you know, Clay's a lot. And yet when Kenneth asked her about Clay, she was like, oh, it's giving black love. I felt like she kind of threw Clay under the bus when she knew she was talking to somebody that maybe wouldn't judge her for talking about a black man in a certain way. I didn't like that. Speaking of which, I understand the conversation she had with Kenneth, but I do feel like the comments that she made at that time made Kenneth rethink his situation with Brittany. But anyway, let's go back to her and Clay. I don't think Clay is ready for marriage, and I think he's being very open about that. And I will say I was not offended with him when it came to eating the soup, because if you guys remember, I have been on dates with men who eat yogurt bowls like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. And so I was not like, oh my God, he's eating it. Like, to me, it just looked like he thought the soup was good. That's it. And I thought he did a very Virgo thing at the end by like organizing all the plates and stuff on the table. Either that or it's very food servicey. But the way she's looking at him when he's just being himself at the table, I was like, they're very interesting. So anyway, that's Clay and AD. Okay, let's get to Chelsea and Jimmy Johnny. So Chelsea, like I said in the pods, was able to play off cool girl, which is why I think she's the one that ended up getting engaged. When she got to the DR, she was unhinged. All of her insecurities and people kept saying, God, she needs for validation so much. And again, I'm trying to defend her. I ain't even seen it. And I'm trying to act as like defense because I know how the internet can be. So I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. She's not that bad. I hadn't even seen it, right? I would have had to leave. They would have had to give me another room. The amount of time she was asking, you know, babe, are you okay? Are you happy with your choice? Are you happy with your choice? Are you happy with it? I would have had to leave. I cannot sit here and have you ask me that question over and over and over again. I'm leaving. But he stayed and he answered and he was really sweet with her. And I felt like really good with her until they went to the cookout on the beach and he saw AD in that blue dress and Jimmy Johnny lost his mind. You know, he was like, Lord, she's stacked. And then he went over and like spun her around and she did a little dance for him. I'm sorry, I would have burned the bar to the ground. I suffered nothing in silence. If you haven't figured that out about me yet, I suffered nothing in silence. I would have burned the bar to the ground. What do you be like? You're going to know right now in front of everybody that I'm disappointed. And I would have felt some type of way about AD too in that moment. Like, why are you dancing for somebody else's man? What are you doing? Girl, read the room. You see your girl? Like, what is going on? But AD kept talking to old boy and, you know, whatever. And it was very clear that, like, if he could have, he would have put her over his arm and ran back to the room with her. But I think that was exactly what Chelsea needed to see to confirm her suspicions about him, which was that he wasn't that attracted to her. He was definitely, you know, gonna make it through and try and deal with it. But he wasn't, her intuition was right. And when they went back to the room and she opened up to him about that, I felt like he was receptive and he was receiving it. But with Chelsea, unfortunately, she has intuition and then she has these screaming insecurities. And I'm looking at it and I'm trying to figure out, how can she overcome this? And again, I'm not a mental health person. I'm just a person who's had my own struggles. And so I'm trying to figure out how is this gonna, because she can't be in a relationship with somebody if this is how she functions. And so finally I was like, it seems like she is asking him always to validate whatever she's feeling. And if he doesn't do it the exact way she needs him to do it, she gets upset with him. And at one point she goes, just take it. Just take what I'm saying. It seems like she's having an argument with him, but he's a representation of a million other people that have come before him, or however many, who have made her feel unheard and unlistened to. And when I was watching her, I was like, it really seems like she needs to learn to listen to herself. And I think a lot of us out there who have had big feelings and maybe somebody hasn't heard us, or they've invalidated us, or they've made us feel small, it's very hard to say, no, this was my feeling. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to feel the same. You don't have to understand, but this is my feeling. And this is how I feel. And if you don't like it, tough. I feel like that begging, that constant, whatever. And I know I'm guilty of it too, especially when it comes to social media, for sure. That begging is your need to try and get back into alignment with whoever you feel is not on your side. But freedom comes when you're able to say, hey, this is how I feel. If you don't agree, let's just agree to disagree. And if our agreeing to disagree means that we have to take permanent space, then that's fine too. But that's hard the closer you are to something that you really want, a person that you really want. It's hard. So you're going to beg, you're going to try, you're going to listen to me, even if they're listening, because they're not responding the way you think they should respond. It's just I felt like Jimmy Johnny was in there fighting World War III with this very unresolved, unhealed woman who tricked him into thinking that she was cool as a cucumber. I'm just hanging out. I'm just, woo. Nah, bruh. Ooh. Anyway, so I felt that was tough. I felt he didn't do her any favors by lying. I didn't spin that girl around. I didn't do this. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. But that is what he did. And apparently them having that argument helped their life together, or whatever, their sex life. That's what they said. So it is what it is. Let's move on to the last couple that I believe. Oh, no. We've got two more, right? So we've got Jeremy and Laura. Jeremy doesn't like Laura from the beginning, right here at the beach. Jeremy did not like Laura. Okay. And, that might have been hard for her to understand, or whatever, or she didn't want to see that. I think Laura's used to not being liked because she has the kind of personality that's hard to swallow. She's a natural critic, which some people might think that that's cute. I know me, I'm sensitive to that kind of thing. So I don't like that. Have your criticisms. You can criticize 1,075 things outside of us and outside of me as a person. But the second you turn that eye on me, I'm gone. I'm out. I cannot stand people who are like, oh, you didn't do that. Oh, pick that up. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, wait. And Jeremy kept saying, oh, I know she'll put me in my place. But I felt from the beginning that there was a little bit of resentment to that. People don't like being put in their place. And I think there's a difference. I think there's a time and a place, and being around somebody who all the time feels like they need to be nitpicking at you or making little comments or little jokes, it's not a healthy thing. Everybody doesn't thrive with that. Laura is a Virgo, and I want to say, I think people don't talk about it a lot, but I think Virgos actually do really well with like air signs, like Libras or Aquariuses or Geminis, because air signs tend to respond differently in situations like that. Like they're not as sensitive. But Jeremy is a Scorpio. Oh my God, I can't even talk. Jeremy is a Scorpio, and like I'm a Pisces. I be sensitive. So you better watch that mouth. You better watch them B words, baby. You better watch those.
Cheers to the girls' weekend.
Cheers,
Let's get it
bitch.
on. You better watch those B words, baby. You better watch those, or you end up over in the ocean.
Cheers.
To us.
I don't do it. Watch it. I don't do it well at all. So I think, Laura's not completely a lost cause, but I definitely think she needs to be with somebody who is not going to be offended. Like even her own family, when they went back to Charlotte, was like, we know how she is. So, it is what it is. I do want to say when they got into their fight on the beach about AD, it was completely warranted for people to be mad at Laura for her comment. I don't know why in the world you would think it would be okay to tell your boyfriend to assault your friend. To me, it shows that she looked at AD's body as like a sexualized spectacle and not as a real life. AD wasn't a person to her. She's just this spectacle. It reminded me actually of the Hottentot Venus and how Black women's bodies in general, when placed against, Eurocentric norms, are seen as being these things that, oh, I can fondle and I can play with this thing. And she was so offended at someone else's offense that she couldn't see how AD was hurt. And there was a point when AD confronted her about the bean dip. And if you haven't seen this yet, I don't know how, but the bean dip comment is when she said that Jeremy should go up and fondle AD's boob, basically. But there was a point when AD confronted her about this. She's like, oh God, it's not even an issue. Refused to take it in, refused to respond. And AD had to choose to be diplomatic in that moment. And I wrote down on my notepad, that is such an awkward moment, like the moment where you have to choose the choose to still stay there moment. You're offended, you are whatever, and the other person is not going to apologize. So you can do one of two things. You can get up and walk away and make it a bigger thing than it needs to be, or you can choose to stay there. And she chose to stay there, and that was, to me, it was awkward, but whatever. Anyway, the last couple that I want to look at is Kevin and Brittany. Unfortunately, I feel like they should not have left the Dominican Republic, but both of them were committed to this idea of what they thought this Christian relationship should be. I think Brittany was just really committed to the idea of loving someone. Can we talk really quickly about how women, I've never been a man, I can't speak to men, but I know women, we have, I don't know if it's innate, I don't know what it is, but like this storage of love in us we just need somebody to come around and kind of give her permission to come out. Like we have this, I've noticed this across the board with all the women on the show, and I know this with me as well. There's just a lot that we have to give, and we have to talk ourselves out of it. We have to be like, oh, I don't really need it. Oh, I mean, I guess I could have kids. Oh, I mean, sure, but meanwhile, you just want to find someone and love the shit out. Like just be able to know that he feels what you're feeling, that he wants to kiss you the way you want to kiss him, that he wants to be with you the way you want to be with him. And I saw a common reality with all of these women, maybe not, even with AD, like trying to make them understand how much is there for them if they'll just be on the same damn page. And the only people that I saw on the same page were Jimmy, Johnny, and Anna. Those were the only people that I saw on the same page as far as like how into each other they were. The rest of them, it felt like you had to be begging. Even Laura with Jeremy, there's a sense of, I'm begging you to see how much of me I want to offer you. And that's why I think level up content and dating content and feminine energy is so popular with women, because thinking in ways that are defensive, trying to protect yourself is so important, because if you don't, you're just like this inside out heart. This just sensitive thing that's walking around with all of this to give. And when you think about it, if things go the way they're supposed to go, you end up even giving your body like to this person, to this union, in order to create and to, it's so much. We're called on to do so much. And I hate the fact that we spend our time begging these people to see what we have to offer them. It's incredibly frustrating. So when I saw what was going on with Kevin and Brittany, I was like, girl, I will come and get you from the DR. Okay? I will come get you and take you home, because you do not need to be there with him. When she's talking to him on the boat and he's looking at dolphins, that man did not want to be there. And I don't know if it was AD's conversation or what, but he didn't want her from the beginning. And it was very, very evident, and obviously even more so when they got home. Okay, let's wrap this up. Let's talk about getting home in Charlotte. So we're home in Charlotte. I really liked Clay at this point. I know the internet has been on him for, he's talking to AD and his mom and his sister. And at one point he says, they're talking about the time thing and not having time for each other, etc. And he's trying to explain to his mom, like, the reason why I haven't had time and she's had a lot more time is because I'm working. She hasn't really been working. And, I'm trying, I think it's very hard fighting a man and trying to get him to understand that he still needs to make time when to him, his highest priority is making money. I've seen that a lot in my life and I've dealt with that too. And so the best thing to do is to find somebody who's at that part in his life when he's not still trying to build that thing, but he already has it. And he's at a point in his life where he's kind of like passive about it, But I think with AD and him, it was like, she's still not seeing that emotional, like meeting in the same space. And to me, I have a heart and compassion for Clay because I do feel like he's really trying. He's really trying. Now, again, that doesn't mean that she has to be satisfied with what he's trying to do, but he's really trying. And I want to say too that, whenever they went to his house, I was like, oh my God, like he really does have his little life together for 30 years old, like 30 years old, a homeowner. I loved that for her because she's a realtor. When I saw, the plaques and stuff he has on the wall about being an All-American, I was like, if they have kids, their kids are going to be beasts when it comes to their athleticism. I was really happy for her when I saw that. But yeah, that emotional meeting in the same place, who knows if he's going to cheat on her or not? Like that's hard. But I didn't hate Clay after what happened when they got to the real world. I think he just needs to be honest with himself about what he really wants. Moving on, Anna and Jimmy Johnny got into the same fight again about the birth control. They hadn't gotten into it, I don't think, in the DR, but they definitely did at home. I feel like he's a great man. He just might not be a great man for her because to put him in a position where he can't comfortably explore his sexual life and she can't comfortably explore hers is not healthy. And so I don't know what they're going to do, but I don't think that they should get married because I'm sorry, but that's a deal breaker. Like if you can't have sex the way you want to because of the threat of babies, then you don't need to be together. Moving on, I'm going to try and go from the least dramatic. Now we're getting into the dramatic couples. Okay. So let's talk about Chelsea and Jimmy Johnny. So once again, Chelsea's horrific insecurities came out when they got to Charlotte. I want to say that I feel like he handles it really well when she's just like flying off the handle. And some of the stuff is valid, but some of it is really, really not. And, him leaving and coming back was probably the best thing that he could have done when they got in one of their fights. I just remember thinking that I couldn't defend her. The internet had been saying all this stuff about her. And normally, you guys know, I make these videos and I'm like, and you guys judge them. But with Chelsea, I'm like, girl, this is woo. And I think he does a really good job at responding to that. We know by now, too, that Jessica's going to try and creep her way back in and that she is encouraged to do this by Laura, who has the audacity to get mad then when Sarah Ann tried to do the same thing and apparently succeeds. And I'll get to them last. I want to talk about Kenneth and Brittany, though, first, because y'all, I always said I would never comment on a Love is Blind person's comment section. I would never DM them. After watching what happened with Kenneth and Brittany, you guys, I sent Brittany a DM. I was so moved by how emotionally bereft he was, by how much he stonewalled her, how much he froze her and iced her out when she was just trying to love him and be committed to the experiment. I have been there. And what I think really got me about Brittany was how many of us have been Brittany's, asking for the bare minimum, and yet we are treated like we're Chelsea's. Like what should have happened with Chelsea. Jimmy Johnny should not have come back to that house, and he did. Right? So we asked for the bare minimum. We asked for it in calm, clear tones. We say, hey, this is what I need. I'm feeling this. You're not doing. And instead of somebody saying, okay, I will try and I'll work on it with you, we get, this is not going to work. I hope you find who you want. Yeah, all right, I'm on my way. Completely treated like we are just when he left the room and said to whoever he was on the phone that he was on his way and left her on the couch and Netflix was playing that song, it's so sad and life is sad, nothing left to say, or whatever they were doing, I was like, girl, and I wrote her a DM. And I basically just said, hey, girl, I'm watching this right now. My heart is breaking with you. Your man is coming. And you know what? I really believe that. for her. Because, I mean, she's a 25-year-old, educated, intelligent. The way she was like, I understand we're going to have, obstacles. I identify as a white woman. You identify as a black man. I know there will be things that we have to face. So well spoken. So, I mean, just statistically speaking, based on statistics alone, her market value, she got a lot of folks who would probably be lined up to date her and to get to know her. She was doing him a favor. I'm not going to talk about speculations on his sexuality because I don't think that's fair. But I will just say I'm so proud of him for turning his comments off, because he would have got straight eaten up by social media based on how he treated her. I think Brittany's really rare, and that she emerged as just Brittany and the girl from last season who dealt with JJ, with American Flag JJ. I don't forgot her name, but Brittany and her are similar, and that they emerged and people are just like, you deserve better. Like across, like no haters. You deserve better, right? Okay. So now let's get to Laura and Jeremy. It was really solid and clear to me when they got to Charlotte. Jeremy don't like that girl. She talks too much. He doesn't like that. And he kind of made it be known in front of her family, like, oh, she has a mouth on her. He doesn't like it. I will say that I didn't like Laura, what she did with Chelsea, how she was like, yeah, I think if you reached out, he might be interested. Like, what? I mean, not Chelsea, but Jessica. What kind of backstabbing? Like, what is that? That's nasty work. But, she got what was... She got the inverse of that with the whole lost and found thing. Now, I will say, I'm not a big fan of Laura, but the way she called him on that lie when he didn't come home, and she was like, you kept your location on so I could see what? What did you want me to do with that? And he's like, so you could see I was in the parking lot. I met up with Sarah Ann, but it wasn't a big deal. And she hit that boy with, you were not at Lost and Found. You were not in the parking lot. You were uptown. That's where Sarah Ann lives. I'm not an idiot and I want out. I felt like I was watching Dateline. I was like, Lord, this is what? What is this season doing? And I believe that to this day, Jeremy and Sarah Ann are still together. So there is that. All right, this was my very long review of 9 episodes of a show. Come on. The new one is coming out either tomorrow or and on Wednesday, depending upon when I post this. And like I said, to me, Clay and AD should not get married. The only couple that should get married are Jimmy, Johnny, and Anna. But that's only if they can get that birth control thing worked out, because otherwise, annulment. Do it now. We know Laura and Jeremy don't get married. I think the only people that are going to go to the altar are these couples right here that I have on the screen. I don't think that Chelsea and Matt should get married either, but they probably will. And I think AD and Clay will probably get married. Even though I don't think Clay should be married, I think they probably will. And my heart goes out to AD because she might have to deal with some emotional labor that she shouldn't have to deal with, Anyway, we shall see. If you listened all the way to the end, thank you so much. Please feel free to share what your thoughts were and what you believe. You see, I told you guys I was going to be on your side this time. We should be in alignment with this one, because I definitely was watching and was like, now what in the fresh hell is this season? Definitely the messiest. I have never cried in a Love is Blind before. And when Kenneth left Brittany, I cried for her. I've never experienced that before watching this. This season has to be the most emotionally involved, but I think Love is Blind. People are beginning to see the writings on the wall with the show. Now, we already know that they've probably cast the next season and whatever else, but at this point, it's not even a show where people find love anymore. It's just where we go to make mess. Although I will say I did look for their Love is Wine. They have a merch line now, and I did look for it, and I would love to be drinking it when I'm watching the last episodes, but I didn't act fast enough, so that's not going to happen. Anyway, feel free to share your opinions in the comments box below, and as always, thank you for watching.